Hi, and welcome to That's Ruddy Mysterious, a podcast of short tales about true mysteries. What happened to the Flannan Isles Lightkeepers? Who was responsible for the Gardner Museum heist? I'm not going to solve those mysteries, but they'll be interesting to learn about. I'm your host, Kelly with an I. Transcripts for all episodes can be found at that'sruddymysterious.wordpress.com. No apostrophe and no exclamation point. Today's tale is about the Arnold 294. The Arnold 294 was a simple, unassuming carriage clock. Or was it? In 2009, the senior specialist on horology at the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, Jonathan Betts, dismantled a carriage clock that the observatory had purchased 10 years prior. He found something that he could not explain. He said, "I have no answers, but the facts are completely extraordinary. This is a genuine mystery." The carriage clock had the maker's mark Reynolds & Son on the back. Reynolds & Sons is a fictitious clock company. The clock was set in a gold bowl, and a handle and feet had been added to it. When Betts disassembled the clock, he found a different maker's mark. The mark had been flattened. It read Arnold & Son. The Arnold 294 is a chronometer. Chronometers are extremely precise timepieces. The term chronometer refers to the precise movement of the piece, not the entire clock. Chronometers have a margin of error of -4 to +6 seconds, which is 3 times more precise than the average timepiece. Because of how accurate they are, chronometers were used by ships to determine their latitude. Chronometers were kept by the Royal Observatory in Greenwich and signed out by ships before their expeditions. The Arnold 294 was made by John Arnold in London, England. John Arnold opened his first workshop in 1762 in the London Strand. He once fixed a watch that was said to be unfixable for William Maguire. He also gave the smallest known repeating watch to King George III. This made him a very popular clockmaker. Arnold also made chronometers for some of the most famous explorers, including Napoleon, Captain Cook, John Franklin, and others. Arnold's son came to work for him, and for 3 years, Arnold & Son was the leading supplier of chronometers to the British Royal Navy. John died in 1799, and his son ran the business alone for 40 years before dying in 1843. What makes the Arnold 294 unique is that it was said to have been on John Franklin's expedition and was said to have been lost in the Arctic. Sir John Franklin departed from England in 1845 in command of 2 ships, the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror. There were 129 officers and men between the 2 ships. Their goal was to traverse the last unnavigated sections of the Northwest Passage in the Canadian Arctic. The ships became icebound in the Victoria Strait near King William's Island. Nearly 24 had died by April 1848, including Franklin, when the Terror's second-in-command, Francis Crozier, and the Erebus's captain, James Fitzpatrick, led the remaining men in abandoning ship. The men headed for the Canadian mainland on foot and disappeared. The Franklin expedition took 10 chronometers with them for each ship. The receipt from the observatory for these chronometers given to the Erebus, however, is only for 9. Chronometers are one of the most important pieces of equipment on a ship, so there is no way the expedition would have left with 1 fewer than they needed, and there is no way one could go missing without someone noticing. The Arnold 294 is not one of the 9 chronometers listed on the receipt issued May 10, 1845. The observatory's ledger also does not show the chronometer being transferred to the Erebus. The ledger from the observatory only shows the loan and return of chronometers, so it is possible the Arnold 294 was not returned to the observatory before being taken by the Erebus. It was not entirely out of the norm for chronometers to be transferred without being returned first. What we do know is that the last entry on the ledger for the Arnold 294 was made on June 26, 1886, 40 years after John Franklin's expedition disappeared. It says, "Lost in the Arctic regions with the Erebus." That is followed by a note to refer to the hydrographer's letter dated December 1st, 1875, and then taken off the books 86 June 26. For over 120 years, this was taken as fact. The entry prior to that, however, says that the Arnold 294 was issued to Commander Wickham on the Beagle in June of 1837. The Beagle left in 1837 to survey Australia and returned in 1843, so it did return before the Franklin expedition left, and there was at least one crew member in common between the Beagle and the Erebus. Is it possible he brought the Arnold 294 to the Erebus? Over the years, numerous expeditions were sent to try and find the remains of the Franklin crew. They brought back plenty of artifacts, including at least one chronometer, and even 2 bodies from the expedition, but the Arnold 294 was not among the artifacts. Everything that was found was meticulously recorded. At some point over the years, someone converted the Arnold 294 into a carriage clock mantelpiece. Betts said that whoever did it must have known the chronometer was stolen, and he believes the conversion was probably done around the year 1900. They wouldn't have altered Arnold's name otherwise. The fictitious maker's mark also points to the person who converted it knowing it was stolen. Betts said that the name Reynolds & Son was a convenient name because it only required the converter to change the AR in the original mark. He believes that the changes made to the chronometer were made in order to make it unrecognizable. Betts said that the chronometer had not spent any time in the Arctic. He said, "This has never been lying around in the open air. I have handled the pocket watch recovered from the expedition, and it is so corroded it is not possible even to open the case. Conditions in the Arctic are so extreme that this would have rusted within a day and been a heap of rubbish within a month." He believes the chronometer was stolen from a ship or from a crew member who was caring for it. Where was the Arnold 294 for over 100 years? Was it really on the Erebus? If not, how could the Franklin expedition have left without one of their chronometers? If the chronometer was on the Franklin expedition, why doesn't it show the normal signs of wear? If the last entry in the ledger was from 1837 and said the Arnold 294 was issued to the Beagle, who decided that it was lost with the Erebus? What do you think? If you're listening on Spotify, scroll down and let me know what you think. Thanks for listening to today's episode of That's Ready Mysterious. I'm your host, Kelly with an I. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a review and follow That's Ready Mysterious to be updated about new episodes. Tune in next Tuesday for another thought-provoking tale.